thanks for joining us this latest instalment of Harkn Academy. Thank you to Wendy for the last few sessions. She's still handed the baton to me for this one. And Lydia's going to be driving because I'm incapable of doing it on my own. But this afternoon, I'm going to be talking about innovation, continuous improvement, and how we can make those things trust builders, not trust breakers, powered by employee voice. Right, so I'm hoping to get through this in probably 35, 40 minutes. And then we'll have plenty of time for questions. But if you have any questions or you want to build or add anything along the way, please do. Don't wait. Yeah, we'll move on. So next slide, please, Lydia. It's like I'm at a presentation somewhere. So moving fast is essential and rapidly changing, increasingly uncertain world. I think that in almost every organization we work with, on every executive I talk to, facing an increasing amount of pressure to go faster, to do more for less, and to get, I guess, more out of what's already a sort of stretched set of resources at their disposal. Next slide, please. But I think the issue becomes wrapped up in this whole question of innovation. You know, it becomes a conversation about disruptive innovation and reinvention, and they're all important things. But I think the way we see this is that there's much more available to organizations than constantly seeking out new and I guess the invention side of things. And that's really what today we're going to be talking about. So next slide. Moving faster. And innovation is about much more than great ideas, right? It's about solving real world problems in our organizations, and our workplaces and companies are full of them, right? So this session, called Moving Fast and Fixing Things and Building Trust, is a title I've bastardized, stolen from a terrific book by Anne Morris and Francis Frey, where they talk about that subject. But the subject here, other than the title, is sort of reflects our own work and the importance of employees in driving positive change, and moreover, how significant that can be in fixing aspects of broken parts of our workplaces. So Lydia, if we can skip on to the next one, please. And that's about scene setting, so we can just skip straight to the next one. Zuckerberg, so this, you might have seen this in the sort of advert for this event. You've gone too far, I think. Go back one. Thank you. Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook were famous for having this slogan, you know, move fast and break things. If you're not breaking stuff, the chances are you're not moving fast enough. So my first question, we've got chat open, I hope we have. What's wrong with it? What's wrong with that statement?
You can chat or you can unmute yourself. Everybody should be able to do either. But you might have to answer your own question.
Well, you probably shared the answer already because we skipped on, didn't we?
Hold on, I'm just allowing everyone's mics.
So
Ian says not everyone can afford to break things.
Yeah, no, quite.
And sometimes the things that break are people.
Exactly right. Yeah. That is people as well. Yeah, precisely right, Ian. And that's the point. Then, so if you click on, you know, the issue is, of course, you know, we know enough about, particularly when you think about Facebook, you know, Silicon Valley, the sort of frat boy culture, reputation, largely a money game to them. And in real life, most other companies, just as you said, Ian, can't afford to break stuff. But the reality is, when we try to go too fast, there is a risk, isn't there, that we end up breaking two really important things: our people and trust with them. So Lydia, skip on, please. And so just to emphasize that point, it's a handful of stats. I could have picked countless of these things. 6 in 10 employees are psychologically disengaged from work. 92% of employees think no action will come from their survey responses. You know, so there's a sort of trust, belief, nobody's listening. Survey responses can be traced back to me, which is again a question of safety and trust, isn't it? And 56% of employees, I think this is an interesting one. 56% of employees believe execs in their companies care about their well-being, yet 91% of execs think their employees believe they care about their well-being. So complicated one, but shows a vastly different belief set, right? So care, at the bottom here, care explains 84% of organizational trust, comes from Paul Zach, trust factor, which is a terrifically important statistic. So endlessly pushing in the face of sort of what are already fragile relationships between employers and employees, and I don't mean that exclusively in relationships, but this is a fraught, tense line, isn't it? So endlessly pushing is high stakes in many, many ways. Lydia, so this is going to bring me on to principle 1. All right, so I've got 3 principles we're going to talk about today. Moving fast must be done with our people, not at the expense of them. All right. Now, next one, please, Lydia. So moving fast requires us to reevaluate how decisions are made and what action is taken. I don't know, is Jeff here today? Jeff Marlowe?
He is, yeah.
I am,
so-
David, but I can't post a chat. I don't know what's going on. It's in the chat. It's saying chat is only available during the meeting, but I can see that Ian Bass has been able to chat. So
He has special permissions, Jeff.
Oh,
You should
okay.
be able to.
I've also posted in the Q&A earlier on, but I don't know
can't
if
see
you're
that.
not seeing that or if you're just ignoring that. But
Sorry. Oh, right. Oh, well done. Yeah, so good. Yeah, so there we go. So we'll keep an eye on that now. Thank you, Jeff. I hadn't noticed. That's because of all the technical wizardry I'm showing this afternoon. But the reason I was asking, but moving fast, this is a simplified version of something that Jeff introduced to me a while back. So on the left-hand side, I was checking if he was here, because if I make this wrong, I'll get called up on it. But the left-hand side shows how things typically work, right? So the body of the organization, the front line, if you like, is where most of the sense making happens. It's where we engage with the customers, with the suppliers. It's where we deal with the effect of the policies and the procedures and the and all that stuff, right? It's we know what's working and what's not in that part of the organization. And typically what's happening in organizations is decision making is happening much further up. So we know what's happening, what needs to be fixed at the top, and the people who decide what actually gets fixed reside somewhere else in the organization. And then the work, of course, is to be done in the improved model by those in the front line. And that's the sort of gist of that, the sort of traditional way that organizations think about this stuff. And of course, on the right-hand side is how it should work. So sense making, decision making, action taking, ever tightly coupled, rapidly iterated, and widely distributed across an organization. Is that correct, Jeff?
I couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, I think I've virtually copied all of your words, but that is so just to emphasize. So I think that this is an important thing to understand and think about, because I want to just emphasize this in the context of the way organizations listen to employees at the moment. So Lydia, if you could just take me on to the next slide, please. So actually, there we are. Thanks. Clicking right. So yeah, when we think about the sort of the engagement survey, and we have to bear in mind that this is still the primary vehicle for companies to seek views for employees, and largely the only thing that's changed in this world is the speed with which we do them. So it used to be once every couple of years, then once a year, and now it's quarterly, maybe every 6 months. But executives decide what's important, what to ask, when to ask it, what response options to offer, what's important to us as an organization. Sense making is still happening in the front line, by the way, but we're not thinking about what people want to talk about. So people understanding what's getting in the way and what could be improved but it's unlikely they're getting asked questions about that. So what they do get asked questions on, that gets fed back to the top of the organization, and then the executive decides what's important. So what to share about the results, when to share them, what to address, which is usually the squeakiest wheels, and then of course, you know, who's going to address it. And then we get the "you said we did." Meanwhile, for those people in the sort of body of the organization, the front line, we end up with a sort of situation where the world has changed since I answered those questions. I don't really recognize the survey, sort of the actions coming down in a sort of top-down fashion, and that means nobody feels heard, right? And this cycle is breaking trust, not building it. So Lydia, if you'll just take us on to the next slide, please. So coming back to the way perhaps it should work. Sense-making, decision-making, action-taking ever tightly coupled, rapidly iterated, and widely distributed across the organization. Correct, again, I think. But that thing, so this is the essence of a learning organization. And as I once attributed this quote to you, Jeff, I know, but it's an Arida Hughes, and I've probably not got that right, but the ability to learn faster than your competitors may be the only sustainable competitive advantage. That is the learning organization. And that brings me to principle 2. Lydia, if you could just clip on, please. To become a learning organization, you must first become a listening organization. We have to get better at listening to the people in our companies. And now we're going to be with the third bit, still setting the scene here for how we might do things differently. Let's talk about the I word. So innovation, we've touched on this already. You know, innovation, it's become synonymous, isn't it, with groundbreaking ideas. I touched on this, disruptive technologies and market-shaking transformations. And it's also led to innovation theatre. Sort of interesting expression where we end up with this sort of creating the impression of the appearance of companies that are innovating, chief innovation officers and digital transformation teams. And where culture isn't really able to sustain innovation in a meaningful way, we end up with this sort of the theatre bit, right? The faking of innovation. Let's appear to be doing stuff, and you know, companies will do innovation weeks, but it's nothing baked into the way they do stuff. And just take me on a slide, Lydia. And this is a point where I want to just share a story. Random introduction of something here. In one of our clients, can you take me on, Lydia, please? Thanks. In one of our clients recently, there was a really interesting comment on the wall one day on Harkn. Basically, it was in a different language, so I'm paraphrasing, but there's no effing milk, right? And Wendy and I looked at that, and I sort of passed a remark to Wendy and said about, look, you know, I wish people would get into some bigger subjects, you know, sort of talk about some bigger things. You know, where are the ideas? Where's the stuff that's going to ignite change? And Wendy made a really interesting observation, right? We want people to show up in the offices every day, and we want them to deliver incredible service to our customers and engage with our suppliers and partners, and to build great products. And we want them to contribute to the growth and development of the firm. And we can't get them milk in the morning, right? That's genius. So that's the sort of principle there, and hopefully the story says enough about innovation, right? If we could just click on, if you want to create a culture of innovation, buy the effing milk first. So just a quick recap. So Lydia, next slide, please. Principles we're talking about here. We want to move fast, fix things, and build trust. Move fast with your people, not at their expense. If you want to become a learning organization, first become a listening organization. And to create a culture of innovation, solve the milk problem. I've said effing enough today, I think. So let's move on to the next piece, right? So this is where I want to just introduce so if you could click me on, Lydia. Thank you. This is a really busy slide. I hope people can sort of follow it, but this should be, look, I mean, I know this should be circular. It sort of lends itself more easily for writing the thing to be displayed this way. But, you know, I think I'm going to talk about the way that we can operate this stuff in Harkn for a bit now. You know, that a way of engaging and listening to people in a different way than they will be used to and that the organizations will be used to. So this is the sort of the model, if you like, for innovation or moving fast, fixing things and building trust with Harkn. Priorities, right? So step one, not rocket science this, but be clear about what you're trying to achieve as an organization and integrate your listening program to those goals, right? So these are the listen fors, the things that are important to your firm. But live employee voice or employee listening feedback allows you to hear what's working and what's not, what's preventing success and performance, and what needs to be fixed. And I think that the big distinction here, when you turn it away from surveys and into what people want to talk about, is we start to hear what matters to them right now. That's the milk conversation. It's the conversation about the dirty dishes that we've seen, you know, become interesting dialogue amongst people inside organizations. You know, the things that get in the way of them being able to do the jobs are not all the things that are solving the organization's problems, but they are certainly slowing it down. Start small to earn trust. So rebuilding trust is about showing people that we care about their ideas, challenges, experiences, and their personal context over time, right? So that's the milk point, isn't it? Harvesting all the ideas. So so seeing ideas everywhere, like the countless opportunities. Using a product like Harkn to collect, to anonymized voice brings everyday life to bear, right? So we see all sorts of things, and it's not always articulated in a way that we would like to see it. It's not always articulated as an idea. It's sometimes, you know, appears as a frustration or as a gripe, but in there are unmet needs. Deal with quick things quickly. You know, not everybody needs a change program. When I talk about that broken cycle of the survey world, I think, you know, the problem is that we are looking constantly for big change. And it, you know, it would be boiled down to 2 or 3 big things we're going to fix, and meanwhile all the gritty stuff is left behind, but they can be dealt with quickly. And then otherwise collate ideas, issues and suggestions for further exploration and action as a group. And then the dialogue bit, right? So this is the frustration for most people and organizations when it comes to the slower cycle that we're used to working, is that, you know, we end up with a position we don't really understand the same subject that we've been asked about. I've been in a room with countless organizations where people will be trying to understand a particular question that they've asked in their survey, and you realize that 10 people have answered it in with totally different things in mind, and that's where dialogue matters. So bringing people together, once you create your long list of ideas from harvesting all of the different interesting observations and comments about things getting in the way and things that you might do differently, harvesting those things and bringing them to the table where you might, for example, get people in a room together. You might do regular meetings. I mean, we would say, you know, maintaining anonymity and asynchronicity is quite important if you want to get as many voices to the table as possible, but encourage dialogue. So obviously features like team rooms, posting questions on the wall. There's a whole bunch of different ways you might explore subjects with people, but it's the dialogue and getting the richness of understanding from as many people as possible that's going to enable us to say, okay, what are the things that we want to be tackling? Again, we can take the milk away, we can take the problems with the dishes away, but when we start to get to the other things stopping people from working, here we can start to explore it collectively. And then we start to move into, you know, forming action groups. Now you've been part of any of the previous Academy sessions, you'll have heard Wendy talk about the community networks and, you know, the champions groups that already exist inside your organization. Now, look, we're talking about similar stuff again, aren't we? You know, but action groups, so people coming together. It could be your Harkn champions, it could easily be some other group, employee experience people, but with a short list of 2 or 3 priorities, start to get your teams together and make sure they are empowered to start to make some of those decisions themselves, right? So that they can develop out the candidate solutions and start to implement. And from there, testing and learning. So trying out short experiments, ongoing feedback and dialogue as change develops, test and learn, that sort of stuff. And testing or tracking results, understanding the impact. So bringing as many voices to bear, studying and watching the impact of things as we're making changes. So looking for changes to things like GDR, or narrative on the wall, even studying just the impact of data patterns across affected populations against a control group, for example. Those things give us an opportunity to really understand what's working and what's not. And then the last piece here, of course, step 7, is closing that feedback loop, making sure that we're letting people know the things that have been changed. It's amazing for us, and I'm going to talk about this again in a minute, but it's amazing to us how many things we see don't get connected back to the employee feedback that generated it. And so the problem is that most people don't realize how many things are being improved. And so, making sure that people understand, celebrate the people, the process, and the lessons that we've learned, and then just repeat over and over again. And so that's why it should be displayed as a circle for sure. Lily, you just click on, please, next slide. And so I'm going to do this. I'm going to try and do this really quickly. I've sort of talked about these points, but I just want to show you how you can do that in Harkn as well. So for those who are using our product, that there are things that most organizations don't use as well as they might, but they're here and could be used. So of course, we talk about the ideas everywhere, be prepared to start small. So just click straight on because I've sort of done that one. Everybody, so the harvesting ideas, how do we actually do that? So you've got this long list, you've got a narrative, a continual social stream of things that people are talking about. And alongside every comment, as you'll know, there are flags. Right? One of those flags is a call to action. So clicking that and writing a short description about it. The description or the explanation, why do I think this is important, what we might do, or how this might fit with other things that the organization is prioritizing right now, is a simple way of then collating and also gathering lots and lots of these things. This is a harvesting process. So next slide, please. And then, we have this sort of the action flag. So where they all go is basically a holding station, a holding pen. So a list of all of the flags, the ideas that have been generated from the wall. And here, basically, this is the point at which we can start to explore, collate, and gather the sort of similarities. So this is the grouping exercise. So publishing this list or sharing it with other people, letting people know the stuff that you might want to be talking about, or creating team rooms to explore them further. This is where we start to get opportunity to bring people into the areas of their interest. So these are the sort of 50 things we've seen most of this month, and we want to do something about it. Come along if you're interested, kind of approach. You can click on, please, Lydia. From here, this is very technical sort of functional, but we have some opportunity where we can sort of get into dialogue, even back to the people who have flagged it. So you want to go back and explore with them what's going on, or let them know that some of the things that they've identified, you might want to get them involved in if it was something they were interested in. And that feature, again, takes advantage of our anonymized sort of messaging tool. So people, again, don't have to be identified at this stage if they don't want to be. So all of these rooms can be set up with in completely anonymous ways. You're just getting people's voices rather than necessarily the loudest voice. But we can turn them at that point. Thank you. We turn them into that point into these sort of draft solutions, right? And so as we build those out, you end up with here's a shape of a project and an idea for a solution, plus all of the evidence that goes with it. So we can see the strength of feeling, all the different narrative, all the different experiences that contribute to this subject. Give us a way, basically, of building both audit trail, evidence, and the start point for the kind of projects that we want to run. And we just click on one more. And then, of course, as I said before, I mentioned that the sort of the process of experiment. So our experiment module gives us an opportunity to say, okay, well, I want to understand the impact of this change I'm going to make. So we've identified the sorts of things we want to work on. We've roughed out a couple of draft, maybe 2 or 3 different approaches, and we want to run that with team A, B, and C. And we can create those experiments in Harkn. So we have different populations with different solutions and different control groups, perhaps, and then understand, well, what happens? Of course, it's not a perfect system, is it? But once we've created the experiment, connected the population to it, then we can understand, well, what's happened to those people over time. Does their experience at work change? Does the language that they use change? Does their engagement with the tool change? There's a whole bunch of different things we might get from the way that people engage both with the platform, but also what they're using it for, to help us understand parameters for success. It won't be the only ways of doing it. But for sure, it gives us a really good lens on understanding what works or appears to work in the same conditions as something else. We just go on. And then, as I said before, so that's a sort of quick canter through, but please let people know what you've done and results as they've come. And that last piece there is, you'd be surprised how many people do not close the loop. And that, by the way, with a 5-minute delay for me faffing about, was a rapid run through. Can I open the floor up for questions? Observations? Jeff, you'll probably have a few.
I would say that, I mean, I don't know, I'm not so familiar hands-on with some of the later things that you showed about how you support the prioritization, harvesting ideas, prioritizing flags, action flags, drafting solutions, experimenting and stuff. But the general overall feel of it, I think, is really positive and encouraging. And I do see this issue. Having spent my career 35 years or so doing consulting work in organizations, one of the things that I used to do very early on in consulting assignments when I'm talking to people is ask them, how often have you seen consultants before? And they'd say, oh, they'd raise their eyes. And then you'd ask them, well, presumably you gave input, what's your sense of what happened to that input? And invariably it went into a black hole and I never heard anything else. And in fact, if I saw anything come back that seemed to be related back to things that I'd fed in, it seemed that what we actually implemented was the opposite of the stuff that I fed in. Yeah. So I think anything that addresses that, and you know me well enough to know that it has to be something that's addressed as ongoing business in the organization, being done by itself, not being something that only happens when outsiders come in and ask questions and feedback to the manager. Because it's one of the things that keeps that separation between the sense making going on in the body of the organization and the decision making is, the senior people don't know what's going on, so they bring consultants in to tell them, and the consultants talk to the people in the body of the organization to find out what's going on, and then they tell the senior people. And so you never kind of build the relationships of, why would you not want to ask your own people what was going on? So yeah, I mean, this is one of the reasons why I'm so interested in what you're up to at Harkn and how you're doing this stuff.
Yeah, thank you. But I think I tell you what, so thank you, Jeff. I think they're really, really helpful comments. Oh, we got a hand gone up. Hi, Ludivine.
Hi, David, and hi, Jeff. I think we've met before. Can't remember where, can't remember when. There was something that jumped at me twice. Hi.
Cameras are coming on.
I was, well, first thought it was interesting the loop hadn't been closed from the broadcast bit back to the start. That jumped at me as a communicator. And now I've lost track of what my second one was, but never mind. I think explaining how decisions are made is now more important than ever. Yeah, the other bit was the fact that people had moved on by the time you provided a solution to something they fed a number of months ago, and then they had lost track of what it was they asked, so therefore they don't feel that the solution being offered is relevant anymore, or front of mind. And these two things for me are kind of linked. And literally just now you both were saying about the importance of the joined up thinking, I think there is something there. Isn't it funny that the link wasn't made on the graph back to the source of the decision, the source of the trigger for the decision making? And I was sitting there thinking, we need more explanation of how the decision was made. So there's definitely something not there yet in that end product. When people are broadcasting back, first of all, should it be just broadcasting, or should it be a two-way conversation even at that point?
Yeah, well, I think you're absolutely right. You know, that there are several things I observe. Again, there's lots of things I think wrapped up. Again, Jeff could talk more to this than I could for sure, but and he and I have discussed this in the past. But I think one of my observations in many large organizations is the rationale that is applied to decisions made by the company, where because identity and leadership become sort of really closely wrapped up for the individual, that sometimes even acknowledging where the idea came from, that you gave me this idea, becomes difficult. That's it. So what this is not a one-off thing. I've observed this many times with stuff that we've seen come out of narrative and dialogue on Harkn, and then suddenly, I think it's even come out as a few people on this call, I think, will recognize some of these things. But from out of the bolt out of the blue in that organization, there'll be an idea come out of a function saying, we've got a great idea, we're going to do this, right? And no recognition or acknowledgement of where that came. And we'll talk about Harkn here. It's about the people on the ground of the organization who are saying, I've got this great idea, right? Or I think we should do this, or wouldn't it be good if? And then suddenly somebody else comes up with an idea, and that's a little bit like going into a meeting, isn't it? And having your idea stolen. But I think
it's such a missed opportunity to
point,
actually right? Give back, recognize, elevate people, make them feel that they're important. And we don't just ask them what the problems are, but also what are the solutions. To hear that frustrates me no end.
Yeah. Well, it did, but I think actually, there's something you've said in there. I just want to sort of address something else. That we often, it's very easy for us to go looking for. Don't just tell me the problems, give me the solutions. Right? Dialogue is an important part of that, because actually, what we realise is that not everybody is able to articulate my frustration, the thing that's, I can tell you what's getting on my nerves. I don't know what the answer to that is. Dialogue helps, because that sense-making process that, where people are then exploring something, kicking it around a bit. But I think it's in that bit where we're saying to people, look, just actually be curious and not judgmental, accepting that we are allowing the organization to learn as it goes. So it can be frustrating. But
in the circle, for me, it was missing explaining or stuff. So, like there was one element missing.
Yeah, okay. Great. Do we have any other? Thank you very much for your questions or your observation. Any other questions or observations? Yes, Ian. Sorry, I was worried that your microphone wasn't working.
Oh, it possibly wasn't. It may well be. You just have to nod and smile if it is. But firstly, I'd love to find that black hole that Jeff was talking about, where all those good ideas go into, wouldn't you? It must be awesome in there.
Yeah.
All of that potential. What I was just going to comment on was the flag. Easy to use the flag when you're heartily annoyed at somebody being obnoxious.
Yeah.
But really powerful to use when you see somebody, for example, maybe struggling with something, and you look at it and you think, oh, we could have been a bit better at that. We could have prepared that person and others like him for whatever it is that they're facing into. Flag, call it out, send it that way. We look at what the issue is, and it's just a different way of raising that issue. You don't have to know who it is. It goes to somebody who thinks, who the devil is it we're supposed to talk to about that, and then finds it.
But I think the point of today, because of course we talk a lot about the well-being component of flags. The bit that I think in this particular session, you know, the idea of utilizing them as part of that, you know, how do we surface more of the things that need to be addressed in this organization? And to the point I was making, so the milk story, what's that really about? It's really about saying there's a foundational set of stuff that we must get better at doing inside organizations, because until we do those things, until we start acknowledging that there's grit in the shoes of our people that we can take care of now, what's the point of throwing my shoulder into some of the bigger things? Why would I bother? You know, this is where the trust problem is, right? This is that cycle I was describing. So forget the speed and all that sort of stuff. The fact that nobody feels, recognizes change that comes with it, nobody feels heard, nobody is saying work gets better for all the years of the sort of focus on, you said we did, there has to be a more dynamic version of that. And I think, you know, so the stuff that we're doing and the journey that Harkn is on, and, you know, helped by perspective, you know, Jeff, we've heard from here, and of course he's made it into my slides, starting to understand that this, you know, the learning organization thing, that getting into sort of a much more human-centered but practical way of getting complex organizations and complex entities to work differently to get better outcomes, right? And it's sort of moving away from linear thinking that I think we've been stuck in for a long time. Anyway, no further questions, nothing else?
Well, I was just going to say that everybody will get the recording, and if you've got any colleagues that registered and couldn't make it, then they will also get the recording. So you can always get in touch with us, with David, with any further thoughts that arise. But yeah, you'll hear from me in the next couple of days.
Cool. Well then, thank you for those who came along.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, David.
Thanks, everyone.
Lydia.
Bye now.